Amma, assalamu alaikum.
Okay. Assalamu wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, brothers and sisters. Inshallah, everybody else is doing well this morning. And it's a good time for us to continue doing what we do in community. I'm really excited about, just inspired by some of what I was able to do this week. We are at the masjid right now. There's the process of like documenting or organizing the history of Masjid Din, and there's just so much information there. The videos and cassette tapes and just stuff that went back to the 50s and the 60s and of course the 70s and the 80s. It's just beautiful, amazing history that has come from this community. And I know a lot of it is tied to this tradition. And it's just beautiful to see that. So I had an opportunity to hear some stuff that I had never heard before. Imam Fahim put a couple of cassettes in my hand. It was like, listen to this, you won't like this. I just, I love it. I love the power of who we are and what we do, and just being able to see that day after day after day, and how it has moved from generations in our people. I mean, what we're doing right now is something that goes back to the 15th century, seriously. And it is, it upsets me a lot when, our history is being told to us by other folks using our dear brother, El Hajj Malik El Shabazz. Only a fool will allow his enemy to teach his children. They're not going to teach it right for a number of reasons. And I get that. The propaganda, the psychological warfare, all of that stuff is tied to it. So we got to do it ourselves. And to get us started with this, I want to continue on with the conversation surrounding the the Black Panther Party. And I want to make sure that you all are able to see the slides right now. You see what's on the screen.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Yeah, I wasn't talking to you, Siri. Jumping in when it ain't your turn. Okay. Inshallah. Great. Okay. So in setting that record straight for us, one of the things that we've done for the past couple of weeks, I was saying that today is going to be the last time that we talk about the history of the Black Panther Party. You can't talk about the Black Panther Party without talking about the way that the book Carry On Tradition starts, which is in the year 1441, because Huey himself, he talked about how the spirit that gives birth to the Black Panther Party was born in the moment when the first Western Europeans came to West Africa and forcibly, mercilessly kidnapped African peoples, put them on those ships, and then took them to Portugal to be forcibly enslaved. He said in that very moment, that's when the spirit that gave birth to the Black Panther Party was born. And so he himself saw the Black Panther Party as a continuation of that tradition. And then another thing that we saw all throughout, especially over the past couple of weeks, without the example of Booker T. Washington communicating with Marcus Garvey being inspired by Booker T. Washington and inspired by movements of Black folks throughout the world. Garvey comes to the United States after the passing of Booker T. Washington, launches his organization, the UNIA. The UNIA has an impact on Black folks throughout the US, throughout the Western Hemisphere. And you could say also in the Eastern Hemisphere too, but mainly here in the Western Hemisphere. And there are multiple people who become members of the UNIA because he had millions of followers and he had millions of members. So two people that we talked about are Earl Little and Louise Little, who become the parents of Malcolm. There is so much conversation around the participation in the UNIA by a man who we know as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that he was inspired by. He could have been a member. I mean, I've seen so many historians say a lot of different things about that. But you have that. And then from the example of the UNIA, you get, here we go. Look, I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit because, and I'm gonna pull back on some things too. So from the UNIA, we get this, we get the Negro World, the UNIA's newspaper. So when we think about a contemporary manifestation of this idea, you'll have a lot of organizations that'll have, they'll have a website, they'll have emails, they'll have social media channels, they'll have YouTube and all of that, because you have to be able to tell your story. So the UNIA had their newspaper, the Negro World. The UNIA was a very influential organization, late 19 teens, 1920s, 1930s, and then eventually beginning to start losing its impact or its resonance as we get into the 40s and the 50s. You have people who still will claim connection to the UNIA and are carrying that banner forward, but you know, everything comes and everything goes. Then with the nation, we have Muhammad Speaks. We have this newspaper that gets put out because you have to control the way that you interface with your community. You can't have somebody else telling your story. And then through the UNIA, through the Nation of Islam, there's books that are put out, there's other educational material that's put out. So your community can have access to information from you. And then when we get to the Black Panther Party, of course, the party has a newspaper. But I think it's important to see just this piece in that context. This was a tradition of we want to be in control of the way that our story is told, or making sure that people who are in our organization, in our community, or just in our Black community are receiving the perspective that comes from us. And this right here is part of the larger tradition of Black newspapers, Black media outlets that have existed here in the United States, that have existed in other parts of the Western Hemisphere where our people are at, but especially here in the United States, there's a deep tradition of Black media, Black literature. I mean, if we go back into the 19th century, Frederick Douglass, he was a part of creating a newspaper and publishing a newspaper regularly that put information out into the Black community. I mean, there's so many things that we can talk about like that. But these organizations were intentional about that. These organizations weren't news media outlets. They were revolutionary organizations and social and political organizations that were focused on what needs to happen in the Black community. And they also said, because we are that, and there are people who are trying to tell stories about us, nah, we need to tell our story accurately and get that out. And all of these papers were extremely successful, circulated multiple states throughout the United States, countries throughout the world. And now Muhammad Speaks his final call, and for and also the Muslim Journal. So we have ways that it has evolved into the modern world for us today and still exists, but it taps into this older history. And then for the Black Panther, which was called the Black Community News Service and became the Intercommunal News Service, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Yeah, there's nothing like that now that still exists within our community. Okay, but I want to go back to this point here to connect our history a little bit more. So when we talk about the Black Panther Party, I had this information up here for Huey, because I'm going to give a lot more emphasis to Huey and then just some of the other history of the Black Panther Party, because it's important to put the proper respect on his name. When we look at a lot of the leaders of our organization, so we talked about Garvey as the leader of the UNIA. He is, depending on the source, especially sources that don't come from us, he's portrayed as a figure who at times is almost like a buffoon, like he's putting on an act. He wasn't that for us from our community. We understood him. He was a little um, theatrical at times, very charismatic, but he did have a program. He wasn't perfect. We don't have leaders within our community that are perfect, and we're not looking for that in our leaders. But we are looking for them to be consistent, to have a vision, to be dedicated, and to be able to organize people. And then another thing that is important, they got to be able to deal with accountability too. And that was one of the shortcomings of Garvey, but he was being attacked by what was emerging as the greatest military force on the planet, which was the United States in the early 1900s. The US government made the decision, we want to disrupt, we want to sabotage the movement of the UNIA. So his organization is one of the first that we know of from our community that had the full attention of the US government and had to survive the attack of the US government. So that's part of Garvey. But Garvey and the UNIA, they do what they do and they inspire so many people throughout the world. Huey studied that because he was a student of his people and he was a student of history. And then he took a lot from the UNIA, which was the UNIA wasn't actively seeking what some people would consider based on the way that white folks have developed this society that we're in, this bourgeois elite that replicates white Anglo-Saxon Protestant norms. UNIA wasn't focused on that. They were focused on everyday regular brothers and sisters. He was in Harlem, and whoever wanted to join would join. And then there were, because he was from Jamaica, there were a lot of brothers and sisters who were West Indian, who came from the Caribbean, who were attracted to that. There were a lot of brothers and sisters who were here in the United States who were attracted to that. And then I was running around with a whole bunch of college degrees and whatever. They just believed in this movement for their people. And that's who he attracted. And so Huey saw that. We can say the same thing for the Nation of Islam. As the nation was expanding, it was brothers and sisters who came from Imam Fahim and I had this conversation the other day. He was telling me about the difference between ghettos and slums. It was attracting brothers and sisters that came from those elements and from other places too. I mean, Malcolm, he comes to the UNI, I mean, he comes to the nation through prison. His brothers and sisters had joined. His brother was serving a 7-year term. And that's how he joins. And we know that. Many of you know that story because you've seen brothers and sisters who came to the nation from those same places. And there's brothers and sisters that came to the nation from other places as well. But I'm saying that because with Huey, when the party is formed, he was intentional about this. His organization approach was focused on the brothers and sisters on the block. That's what he said. And in using Marxist Leninist terms, because they styled themselves within socialist, communist ideological framework, but then also evolved that tremendously. That would be considered the lumpen proletariat. And some of y'all might remember this in the days where you saw the Black Panther Party out here, very, very heavy. They actually had a band called the Lumpen. And that's where they got that name from, as in the lumpen proletariat, because according to Marx, you have this division in society. You have the bourgeoisie, you have the petite bourgeoisie, you have the proletariat, the working class, and then you have the lumpen proletariat. In the regular, like Marxist conversation, you'll hear heavy focus on the proletariat because that's how like white folks saw the world, which is a very limited perspective. They weren't talking about brothers and sisters who were stolen from their homeland, who were forcibly enslaved, and native and indigenous people who had their land stolen from them. They're like, they're not even considered a working class. So they are the lowest of the low. That's the lumpen proletariat. So Huey's focus was, we're gonna organize our people because our people are the lowest of the low. Like we're not even considered within this Marxist cosmology. So the lumpen proletariat. The brothers and the sisters on the block, that's what we're gonna organize. That's what they did. That's a tradition. That was part of the movement of the UNIA. That was part of the movement of the nation. That was part of the movement of the Black Panther Party. And I think a reason why we see these groups all being effective is because of that, because that was their organizing strategy or a major part of their organizing strategy. One example that I give that's a little bit different. So like when the NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, when that was established in the early 1900s, you have W.E.B. Du Bois, you have some other white folks who are part of the organizing charter, you have some other black folks, you have W.E.B. Du Bois, who in the early years of the 20th century, he had this idea of like the talented tenth. He eventually walks back from that and he comes much more closer to the ideology of Booker T. Washington, Garvey, Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and what eventually is going to become the Black Panther Party in his last years when he's in Ghana, because he eventually is like, I can't even deal with the US no more. I got to leave. All right. So in those early years of like with the NAACP, they were effective, but they were catering to that Black ideological elite. They weren't able to organize a lot of the brothers and sisters in the community. It took other folks who came from communities like that to push the NAACP. Y'all got to move differently, especially in these southern states. You got to move differently. Like Medgar Evers was one of those folks who was challenging the NAACP to organize differently. There are a number of other names that I can point to. They challenged the NAACP to focus on the community differently and not just, we can't be thinking about these brothers and sisters who have these titles and think that they're going to move the Black community. UNIA wasn't focused on that. Nation of Islam wasn't focused on that, and the Black Panther Party wasn't focused on that intentionally and had impact. All right, another piece that I want to bring up, let me see, where did I put that? Is here. Yeah. So I made this comment last time, and this is not something that I see enough focus on, and I think is really, really important, especially as we talk about tradition. So in Muhammad Speaks, which also now you'll see it in the final call when you look on the back pages. If you go to the Nation of Islam website, this is, you'll see this too in terms of what the Muslims want, what the Muslims believe. This is very similar to what you see in the 10-point platform and program, almost word for word, because Huey studied the Nation of Islam. He studied the UNIA. He studied the Nation of Islam. He studied our history, especially the revolutionary history of Black people. And he was like, we believe that, we're going to take that too. So I want to walk you through that. So this is, all y'all should be very well versed in this, but we want freedom. We want a full and complete freedom. Point one for the Black Panther Party, we want freedom. We want power to determine the destiny of our Black community. Point two, we want justice, equal justice under the law. We want justice applied equally to all, regardless of creed or class or color. In point 10, we want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. We want equality of opportunity. We want equal membership in society with the best in civilized society. 4, we want our people in America whose parents or grandparents were descendants from slaves to be allowed to establish a separate state or territory of their own, either on this continent or elsewhere. We believe that our former slave masters are obligated to provide such land and that the area must be fertile and minerally rich. We believe that our former slave masters are obligated to maintain and supply our needs in this separate territory for the next 20 to 25 years until we're able to produce and supply our own needs. 5, we want freedom for all believers of Islam now held in federal prisons. I'm gonna skip back to this one. We want 8, so this is point 8 here. We want freedom for all Black men in federal, state, county, and city prisons and jails. 6, we want an immediate end to police brutality and mob attacks against the so-called Negroes throughout the United States. Point 7, we want an immediate end to police brutality and murder of Black people. Point 8, we want the government of the United States to exempt our people from all taxation as long as we are deprived of equal justice under the laws of the land. Point 6, we want all Black men to be exempt from military service. Point 9, We want equal education, but separate schools up to 16 for boys and 18 for girls on the condition that the girls be sent to women's colleges. And then it continues. We point five for the Black Panther Party. We want education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present day society. And then point 10, we believe that intermarriage or race mixing should be prohibited. The Black Panther Party didn't have a comment on that, but the Black Panther Party was very focused on Black people, Black relationships, Black community, all of that. But just this, like this is me doing this briefly. You see how similar this is from the nation to the 10-point platform and program of the Black Panther Party. Almost identical. And then where Huey felt certain things need to be changed in order to reflect the political orientation of the Black Panther Party, that's what they did. But the Nation of Islam, the momentum, the focus of the Nation of Islam influences the development of the Black Panther Party. Huey studied that. Now he was like, we believe similar things. This is what we want. So this is what our 10-point platform and program is going to say. And I think that's amazing. That's powerful. Because it represents so many things in this concept of generational progress, or this revolutionary spirit moving from generation to generation to generation. And then the ode to those who came before and what they did. And it's there. All right, so then continuing. We talked a lot about this, I think, last week. We talked about the Black Panther Party taking action on this. So words are beautiful, actions are supreme. That's Che Guevara. So to say we want an immediate end to police brutality and the murder of Black people is one thing. To do something about that is something else. So the Black Panther Party took action. And they took action by, this is one of the first things that they actually did to address police brutality. So there's a family in Richmond, the family of Denzel Dowell. They contacted the Black Panther Party, and this is when the Black Panther Party published its first edition of the Black Panthers. So this came out April 25th, 1967. So October 1966, Black Panther Party is created. In April, they published their first edition of their newspaper. And the focus of that was, why was Denzel Dowell killed? This is the front page of the newspaper. The family had reached out. Denzel Dowell shot in the back by Richmond police officers. The family's like, we need help. Black Panther Party begins to organize in the Richmond community, protesting against the police in Richmond, to have those cops held accountable for the police brutality that they visited upon his brother right here, Denzel Dowell. And this starts more than 15 years of publishing the Black Panther newspaper. All right. And then, of course, the Mulford Act gets put in place in order to take these guns out of the hands of the Black Panther Party, because Oakland police were afraid. You have just the city of Oakland, the county of Alameda, the state of California. So the Republicans, the Democrats, these same people who are running around right now trying to tell people you need to vote for this person and vote for this person, they came together to say, we don't want Black folks having guns, to get the police to stop brutalizing folks in their community, along with the National Rifle Association, the NRA. The only time that the NRA has ever signed off on gun control in its history, they did that here in the Bay Area in order to take guns out of the hands of our young brothers and sisters who were using the legal right in order to get the police to stop brutalizing our people. But when kids is killed in schools every day, every year, for the past 20 plus years, these people do nothing to try to do anything about gun control. All right, then we get into the Free Huey campaign, because this is our history as well. They have done everything in their power, talking about the U.S. government, talking about local organizations, talking about white militias, individual white citizens, to try to kill off our people. If I pulled a list out in front of you right now of Black folks who were leaders who were assassinated or had attempted assassinations put up on them, it would be a super long list. To give an example of somebody real quick, 1831, Nat Turner. leads an uprising of forcibly enslaved people. They killed that brother, and they tried to make an example out of his death. There are so many other examples that I can pull from the 1800s. I mean, the fact that the KKK creates itself in 1866 in Pulaski, Tennessee. What did they do? They waged violent war on the Black community, killing Black leaders, intimidating Black leaders. The concept of lynching and the public way, brutal way of doing that. And then when we get into the 1900s, I mean, there were attempted assassinations on Garvey. You have eventually Garvey being deported from the United States to make sure that he couldn't continue his influence. The imprisonment of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. You have attempts made on his life. You have, I mean, the list goes on. Our brother Medgar Evers assassinated in his driveway. You had, going back a little bit, Sister Ida B. Wells, they made attempts on her life as well. So John Fry, police officer from Oakland Police Department, pulls over a Black Panther Party car. He doesn't know who's in it, but when he walks up to the car and he sees it as Huey, he makes a decision: I'm about to kill this dude. And walks Huey back to his squad car, hitting him in his back, pushing him, eventually reaches for his revolver. Huey defends himself. Huey ends up getting shot. John Fry gets shot multiple times. Another cop on the scene gets shot as well. John Fry dies as a result of his injuries. Huey doesn't. Huey's arrested, put on trial for the murder of a white police officer. This is 1967. And Huey beats the case 3 times because it was clear that they tried to manufacture the situation and then pin something on him, and Huey was defending himself. And that right there is, I mean, I don't know how many folks at this time, and this is something that I love to look up, who were put on charges for murdering a police officer, a white cop, and they got off in the 1900s. I don't know, but Huey did. And John Fry made the decision, and this is where, man plans and a law plans, and a law is the best of planners. This dude thought, I'm gonna kill the leader of the Black Panther Party, and I'm gonna stop the movement. He didn't. He ends up dying. And as a result of Huey being locked up, this leads to the Free Huey campaign, and the Black Panther Party expands so far. It expands to LA. We talked a little bit about this last time. So we got Bunchy Carter, John Huggins, Sister Elaine, and Erica Huggins. And I'm going to make a point about Sister Elaine right now because she's somebody that I know very, very well. I've been taught by Elaine leadership, revolutionary leadership, and just the history of the Black Panther Party. And so she joins in 1968. But before she joins, her story starts actually 2 generations before her, because her grandfather is a man by the name of Emmett Scott. Emmett Scott was in an area that we're very familiar with in Tuskegee, Alabama. He worked at a university that many of us are familiar with. He worked at Tuskegee. And not only did he work there, he was known as the right hand of a man that we know, Booker T. Washington. So Elaine's grandfather, Emmett Scott, worked right with Booker T. Washington. So when Booker T. Washington was traveling, the person who was answering and responding to the mail that Booker T. Washington would get was Elaine's grandfather. He helped build the Tuskegee machine. So he was part of this radical revolutionary work in the Black community that was tied to Tuskegee and Booker T. Washington. His granddaughter joins the Black Panther Party in 1968 and eventually becomes the only woman that leads the Black Panther Party when Huey goes into exile in Cuba in 1973 and 1974. Huey told Elaine, I need you to lead my party when I'm gone. She took over the leadership. She ran it for 3.5 years. But that's tradition. You know what I'm saying? Her father, or her grandfather, was part of one of the most influential Black communities of Black organizations in the early 1900s. She then joins the Black Panther Party, one of the most important, influential Black political organizations in the latter part of the 20th century, and becomes a leader in that organization. That's tradition. So the LA chapter, Bunchy, John, Elaine, Erica. And then survival pending revolution. This becomes a philosophical uh, principle of the Black Panther Party. We want freedom. So freedom is going to come through some type of revolutionary struggle, whatever that revolutionary struggle is going to look like. But until we're ready for that revolutionary struggle, we got to survive. So these are things that the Black Panther Party established. And Huey led so much of this. Our people need to eat. So we're going to create food programs, breakfast programs for children, food programs. Our people need housing. Our people need these things. We said this in the 10-point platform and program. You can't say it and not take action on it. So they did that. So there's so many generations of young people who will come up to folks, because I spend a lot of time with the folks who are the elders, who are members of the party, and like, you know, um, we was able to eat food over the summer because of the party. We was able to go to school because we went to the party school, like all that stuff. It's the impact is still felt to this day. And then we get here, and this will probably be the last little piece that we'll get a chance to talk about, which is something that we know very, very well. So going back to Garvey, the US government's focus on destabilizing our organizations and our movements for the freedom of our people. Like this is a tradition of the US government. This is a tradition of this society going back to colonial times. Oh, we need to know what these people are doing. So you have somebody who will be like, oh, those Negroes over there, they trying to get free. So they go tell an overseer, they go tell somebody, and then they bring their people in order to try to squash that. That's a tradition that this place is also engaged in. So COINTELPRO is just an evolutionary step in that. But with the counterintelligence program, this memo that comes out March 4th, 1968, to prevent the coalition of militant Black nationalist groups. This is FBI language. This isn't our language. We didn't call ourselves that. In unity, there is strength, a truism that is no less valid for all its triteness. An effective coalition of Black nationalist groups might be the first step towards a real Mau Mau, Black Revolutionary Army in America, the beginning of a true Black revolution. So this is on record. One of the greatest fears of the US government is that a true Black revolution will take place. I'll go here so you can see the points bigger. So the Mau Mau, they come from Kenya, and they were a revolutionary army that was fighting against colonization of their land, kicking those colonists and those imperialists out. So they want to prevent the coalition, prevent these groups from coming together. Two, a point that many of us know very, very well, prevent the rise of a Messiah who can unify and electrify the militant Black nationalist movement. Malcolm X might have been such a Messiah. He's the martyr of the movement today. Martin Luther King, Stokely Carmichael, and Elijah Muhammad all aspire to this position. Elijah Muhammad is less of a threat because of his age. King could be a very real contender for this position should he abandon his supposed obedience to white liberal doctrines, nonviolence, and embrace Black nationalism. Carmichael has the necessary charisma to be a real threat in this way. All right. I know yesterday there was a security meeting for the brothers. I wasn't able to make it, but making a point out of this, coming from the Art of War, Sun Tzu talks about if you know yourself and you know your enemy, you'll be victorious in every battle. If you know yourself and you don't know your enemy, you'll win one, you'll lose one. If you don't know yourself and you don't know your enemy, you're destined to lose in every single confrontation. This is our enemy. There's no doubt about it. They know us. They know our potential. They don't know our full potential, but they have an idea. In 1968, they said, these are the people that we need to watch out for, who are potential Messiah type figures. And they use language, which is really important. These are people who can move people mentally. They can move people spiritually. They can excite the people to engage in the activity that is going to lead them to their freedom. So we need to know who they are, and we need to understand the potential effectiveness of those people. Look at this. They got a whole breakdown of everybody in here. Malcolm might have been such a Messiah. Malcolm had been dead 3 years by the time they put this out. Malcolm was assassinated February 65. This came out March of 68. They talk about King. They talk about Stokely. They talk about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. They have an analysis on the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He's less of a threat because of his age. Honorable Elijah Muhammad passes away in 75. So they're like, he's there, but we might not have to worry about him as much because he's older. They have an analysis of us. And not only that, they're working. They're not just saying it, they're working. What are we doing? What are we doing? It's a big question. And I don't know what answers we have for that, but we need to have answers for that because these people haven't stopped. They're still doing this in 2024. They're going to be doing this next year. They're going to be doing it the year after that. What are we doing? Then, here they go. Prevent violence on the part of Black nationalist groups. This is of primary importance. And what they really should be saying, if they want to be accurate, because it's not about violence, prevent any type of revolutionary or freedom leading activity on behalf of these groups. Then it should be a goal of the counterintelligence program to pinpoint potential troublemakers and neutralize them before they exercise their potential for violence. And this is all stuff that I bring to my students in my programs, especially in my Black program, building leaders and activists with collective knowledge. And we emphasize this point. I asked them, I'm like, what do you think it means to neutralize? And the students will start raising their hands. They'll be like, well, you can lock them up. You can kill to neutralize. I'm like, exactly. All of that, all those points, because these are all part of their strategies. How many of our folks have they locked up? Some of y'all might have been locked up. I don't know. But that's a tactic that they use. We have a brother from our community right now, Imam Shuaibe, who's locked up as a political prisoner for something that he did not do. Neutralizes and kill. How many of our leaders, brothers and sisters from our communities, have these people brutalized and killed? They do what they say. That's what these people do. And when it comes to our movements, especially the Black Panther Party, these people did that. And then they want to prevent these groups from gaining respectability. So they did that, which is part of the reason why we can't listen to the way that they talk about our history. So prevent them from gaining respectability in the eyes of the Black community. Second, they must be discredited to the white community. And third, they must be discredited in the eyes of Negro radicals. So they wage a propaganda campaign. You can't have these people looking favorable in the eyes of any of these people. And then lastly, which is what they did to target my generation, because I'm the child of y'all. Like for real, y'all, as y'all became parents, your children are my peers. So as y'all were making moves, 60s and the 70s and the early 80s, the children that you all produced, or maybe your grandchildren, those are my peers. This is what the government had for us. A final goal should be to prevent the long-range growth of militant Black organizations, especially among youth. Specific tactics to prevent these groups from converting young people must be developed. So we hear it a lot at the masjid, where we want our youth to come back. That's me. That's my generation. Because they waged war on us. And y'all know it because y'all saw it. Especially in Oakland. You saw what was happening in Oakland in the 80s going into the 90s. And then by the time we get to the latter part of the 90s, it began to taper off a little bit. But they came after us because they knew that we were the ones who would carry that tradition forward, especially in California, where the Black Panther Party was at, where the nation relocated. And then as it begins to expand under the leadership of Imam Shuaibe, like this was a hub of all of that revolutionary Black activity. They came for us. They came for your children. They came for my generation. And we're doing our best to survive it. Some of us are still here. We're ready. The war ain't over, so we got to fight regardless. But this is what they said, and they did it. So what does that look like in terms of the Black Panther Party as I start to wrap up? The greatest threat to the internal security of the United States in 1969, this is what the US government said. So the Black Panther Party represents the greatest threat to the internal security of the United States. If you don't believe me, here's the newspaper article where it says that. In 1969, the US government waged a war on the Black Panther Party, which resulted in the killings of Black Panther Party members, infiltration of Black Panther Party chapters, and multiple members locked up as political prisoners. Look at this. Started off the year in 69, January of 1969. Bunchy Carter, John Huggins assassinated at UCLA because they wanted this to stop. Ronald Karenga, who was the leader of the United Slaves Organization, who is now known as Maulana Karenga, he was caught up in that as well. Some people claim that he was an agent of the US government. I don't know. but his organization, they were the trigger pullers that were behind the assassination of Bunchy and John Huggins. Later on that year, in December, and there's a whole bunch of other people that we'll see shortly, another brother, a name that y'all know, Fred Hampton, and a brother named Mark Clark. This was December 4th, 1969. So January 17th, December 4th, 1969. And they was busy all throughout that year killing members of the Black Panther Party. How did they do it? They used informants like this man right here, William O'Neill. That's the bed where Fred Hampton was at. He was drugged the night that he went to sleep. So December 3rd, William O'Neill or somebody that was an informant put something in his food and his drink. So when he went to sleep, he couldn't wake up. Cops come in, fired hundreds of shots into the Black Panther Party apartment where they were at, into the body of Fred Hampton, making sure that brother would never breathe another breath. And they knew where he was at because William O'Neill had provided them a whole outline of Fred Hampton's apartment. Also, before Fred Hampton was killed, the LAPD, the first time that SWAT, Special Weapons and Tactics, was ever used by any police department throughout the United States, it was deployed on the LA chapter of the Black Panther Party. 41st and Central. They fired more than 5,000 rounds at the Black Panther Party office on 41st and Central in Southern California. These are some other names of the fallen members. John Savage, killed in San Diego. Larry Robertson, Sylvester Bell, Walter Touré, Sidney Miller, Jake Spurgeon Winters, Fred Hampton, Mark Clark, because they waged war on our community. And they killed people. A whole bunch of people were locked up as well. But you can kill a revolutionary, but you can't kill a revolution. And more members with powerful legacies. The women in the Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party is the only organization that had a political focus that we can say had women as part of the leadership. And you had one woman in particular who led the Black Panther Party for 3.5 years, Sister Elaine Brown. You can't say the same thing for the SCLC. You can't say the same thing for SNCC. You can't say the same thing for RAM, Revolutionary Action Movement, for CORE, Council on Racial, I'm forgetting what the E stands for. You can't say the same thing for almost any other Black political organization in the 20th century, but you can say that for the Black Panther Party. And their example inspires folks all throughout the United States and throughout the world. The Brown Berets are formed based on the example of the Black Panther Party. And the Black Panther Party, of course, is based on the example of the Nation of Islam, the UNIA, and the Genius of Huey. The Young Lords is formed based on the example of the Black Panther Party. The AIM movement, American Indian movement, inspired by the Black Panther Party. The Young Patriots, they form in Chicago with the Black Panther Party there, the Rainbow Coalition. Students for Democratic Society, they partner with the Black Panther Party. Like all of these movements over here in the United States, they saw the Black Panther Party as the leaders of their revolution and their political thought. And then, of course, they had international effect. They were in North Korea, North Vietnam, they were in China. They were connected with our brothers and sisters on the African continent. They were connected with our brothers and sisters in Palestine. They were connected with our brothers and sisters in Cuba because they had that international focus, which the Garvey movement had. And I mean, it's just so much more, but I said I was going to stop, so let me stop here. And our history is powerful, and it's powerful because it's something that's been built on for generations. The Black Panther Party didn't just create itself. It came about because of what our brothers and sisters have been doing for hundreds and hundreds of years, especially our brothers and sisters in the 1900s, in the 20th century. And they followed the blueprint, and then they evolved it in their day and time. And they formed an organization that harnessed the power of Garvey, the UNIA, of the Nation of Islam, of other Black revolutionary political organizations. And then they did their thing. And they focused on brothers and sisters from the block. That's what we're gonna organize. They not afraid. They ain't gonna back down. And they didn't. In the face of the strongest military governmental apparatus that we've ever seen in the history of this world, using its full might to try to squash it. And they didn't defeat the Black Panther Party. They didn't. They definitely had an impact, but they didn't defeat them because they continued well into the 70s and continue to have positive impact on our community here in the United States and internationally. Because that's the power of our people. We don't stop until we win. This tradition that we're engaging in goes back to 1441, and we haven't stopped one day. And we're not. And we're going to see it as we move into the next one, which will be Amilcar Cabral. But I appreciate it. Thank you, Imam Fahim, for letting me go just a couple minutes longer to finish this part out. But yeah, it's powerful, powerful history. And inshallah, it was beneficial.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We're here to wait. Let me do. You do so much when you say so much, because it gives us the opportunity to Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, gives us the opportunity to speak about things that we haven't talked about. There's so many things that's just hard to hear. Let me see if I can hit it real quick. Yes, and we are going to be a little after 10 o'clock this morning too, but everybody's free human beings. You got to do what you got to do. But let me do this before I get too far away from it. Unfortunately, but reality is that whole strategy of assassination. You see that going on in the so-called Middle East right now. You see the occupied Palestine. You see the Zionists, etc., who are doing just that. They're just going to, hey, who's the problem? Kill them. Who's the problem? Kill them. Collateral damage. It is what it is. That's so. It's real hard to get mad at. Well, I say it's real hard as to totally indict without mitigation the killing that goes on in our neighborhoods, because the leadership of the world, America included, has shown that, look, if you can't deal with a problem diplomatically, if you can't deal with it in ways that satisfies or holds to the plan that you have, well, just kill them. That's it. Just kill them, neutralize them. That's deranged, quote unquote, human nature. I put that human in quotes because human beings don't do that, but deranged human beings do that. But it's in the interest. So it's just like interest, right? Whatever the interest is in that part of the world is nothing but a mirror of what the interests are and were of those who want to oppress those who want to oppress those who don't want to be oppressed. It's like, look, if you can't do it by, what is it? If you can't convince them, kill them. It's ugly, it's monstrous, but it's real, right? And I'm gonna put y'all back on that Bitcoin piece. I'm gonna send you to somebody okay, here's the word, the name, Eric Cason, Erik Cason, Cason. Just put that in an endless war. Then you'll get the same scenario from the quote unquote the dollar elite, the economic elite, the global economic elite. They got the same attitude toward the masses of the world, and whatever is interrupting the fiat system, which is the let's just call it the established slave making system, the established global economic slave plantation system. That's the world is on that. And everybody who has a fiat currency, every country that has a fiat currency, which is basically every country, they have in that, it's like owning a prison. Okay, I can't draw the analogy out so fully, but it should be clear. Since the fiat system is grounded in debt slavery right now, and debt slavery is where the power of governments come from, because the fiat is what makes their power possible. All right, so anything that threatens the fiat, that is the debt slavery, quote unquote, abstract prison system that they have, then that's a threat. You're threatening my prison. What? My fiat currency. And so that threat to America, you saw what they did to Gaddafi, you saw what they did to Saddam, you saw again, and they are masters at propaganda. We could just stay on that conversation. I don't want to, but it happens. Okay, my brother, I want you to add this to your future presentation on that, because that's what we're here for. We're here blending and connecting and how, what do you call it, stitching together this great history of ours, right? So qualify your statement about women leadership in the absence of the established leaders of organization. And you got to put Clara Muhammad at the top of that list. You already mentioned the connection between the Black Panthers and the Nation of Islam. You already mentioned those connections. And the woman leadership, alhamdulillah, we always, and we love, and we need, we must have, and we survive because of women leadership, right? Ida B. Wells, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, and so many that I don't know, right? Now, to talk about the power, the strength, the force, the legacy, the leadership, I have to say, Clara Muhammad, this is not out of any prejudice. We have the documentation from our historian, Imam Darnell Kareem. You talk about women, the women who ride or die right here. This. I'm gonna show it on the other side too. This is a picture of them in their mugshot. I'm gonna let you. The men, the mugshot for the women, they just roll them up as a whole group. The women mugshot and the men. Okay, this is in the book. You can get this book, Meshua thing, whatever. I don't think Imam Darnell has it on Amazon or anything like that, but it's the first national independent Islamic school system in America, right? This is no history library should be without this, right? Okay, so this is the picture of the women. I mean, this is 1938, Nation of Islam. Let me cover the Clara Muhammad piece, right? Clara Muhammad was already, and there are two books on her too. That has to be read. So when Elijah Muhammad was put in prison, as you mentioned, Clara Muhammad ran the Nation of Islam, and also there's the brother Makram Al-Amin, his mother who is in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Imam Makram. And I was just listening to a piece that he did in Princeton University, having been invited there by the chaplain of Princeton University. My brother Zakia, you sent that to me, I believe. I don't know who sent it to me. I think Zakia, you sent me somewhere. Any case, so his mother was one of the secretaries for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I don't think she was there. She was there at the time that I'm referencing right now. But Imam Darnell Kareem's mother was. Imam Darnell Kareem, the author of this book, he would ride in the car for them to go visit Elijah Muhammad and his father, Imam Darnell Kareem's father. His mother and Clara Muhammad would go to the prisons to visit the two of them and the other men who were in prison for the same reason, imprisoned for the same reason, so-called draft dodging or whatever. So they were the ones that ran the Nation of Islam. So the survival of the Nation of Islam, Clara Muhammad was the key when Elijah Muhammad was running on his own, because as you mentioned, there's the assassination attempts didn't just come from the establishment authority. That also, like you pointed out, that came out, well, they were much less, thank you for your history, they were much less concerned about, okay, well, he's old on that level. But before that, he had to contend with the people who were in the Nation of Islam after Farah Muhammad left and said, no, he ain't gonna be the leader, I'm gonna be the leader. So all that, he had to deal with that. But moving past that, okay, this is 1938, because Elijah Muhammad being in prison was in prison in the 40s, of course, for as it relates to the draft dodging. I just have to use it where they got him for just, you won't even sign the papers because you won't sign the papers. Okay, go to jail. But we already knew, like you said, that what the plan and what the reason was for it. in case. So these women, read this right quick. Just I'll put the heading on it. The Muslim women who fought for their children's education were arrested in Chicago from a jail fight. These women, check it now. Come on. These women were bucking up with the police. They said, huh, what? Our children, the authorities came by Claire Muhammad's house, children playing in the street. They come and they say, why ain't these children in school, right? The child running the house, right? Why ain't these children in school? Claire Muhammad tell them, said, you have to kill me as dead as this doorpost before I put my children in your devil school. And who was the child behind her? Hiding behind the skirt, behind the door when they were trying to get her to put her children in school? Wallace D. Muhammad. Right. So it's like, nah, come on, what we gonna do? What it is. This is what's happening, right? So that's how they got down. That's how those women got down. And Claire Muhammad, this is for history. It's like I'm just taking advantage of what you said, Tyson, and for everybody else to understand. So this can be added to the history. So the men, come on now, the men was right there with them. Men, they in the lineup for their photo, and the women, they in the lineup for their photo. It's like, okay, come on, get your picture, because it ain't happening. This is what we ain't going out like that, right? So their fight in 1930, fight in March 35, 1930, they fighting them in the police station. Come on now. We in the police station. The women. Shoot, man, Lord. All right. So at the famous 11th Street police station, do you understand? This is the police station of the Al Capone era in Chicago. I'm not shouting at Tyson. I'm shouting to the world. It's my soul. It's like, come on. Do you think those were playing? Not at all. And so they fought for their children's education. They were arrested, and they were in this lineup at 11th Street Jail. All right. So let me see. I'll just read the note that's right in front of me right here, and then I'll go on with what I'm supposed to be talking about this morning. I said, my apologies to the brave pioneers. This is Donnell, Imam Donnell writing. My apologies to the brave pioneers and the instructors and board members of Detroit who stood tall in defense of their university. I was unable to get any pictures or names, but that in no way detracts from the courage they demonstrated in the face of the attack by the Detroit police. So not only did it happen in Chicago, Temple number 2, that is from that community, it happened in number 1 in Detroit. So it's like, so add that to your very rich presentation, my brother, because it keeps that, whatever, it keeps the line together. Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much. And again, is we really need to understand is this that strategy that if you can't convert them, kill them, whatever. I mean, the people, if you can't. Oh, the economic hitman is also a paradigm that lays that out. Just in principle, I'm just trying to say it's a way of doing quote unquote business in the world of devilish power holders. You either 30 pieces of silver or 30 silver bullets, or 30, something like that, 30 pieces of silver or 30 bullets. It's like they go to these leaders in the global scheme. Okay, this is your choice. You can take these 30 pieces of silver, or you're going to get this bullet. It's like, and most of them take the 30 pieces of silver. The ones who don't, those are the ones that you also see the history of assassination. Literally, just go down the list. starting with the place where they get the Banana Republic concepts from, but I'm going too far. But alhamdulillah, so mashallah, may Allah guide, protect, etc., etc. And so much to be said about that, because Imam Muhammad rahimahullah, in the light of that, is a whole different conversation. Is when I say a whole different conversation, it's an extension of that conversation, because I know of there's a book that put out. I delayed responding to it for a very long time, but I responded to it. Imam W.D. Muhammad, government agent. That was something that was put out there by some unknown group. Nobody put their name on it. It's anonymous, but they had all that. So that's a way to read. That is a way to read the transition of Imam Muhammad from what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was doing, and those other kind of COINTELPRO projects. It would seem there's a reading, and that those who applied, and no doubt still apply it in that way, but mashallah, it is what it is. It's almost like he was complicit in whatever, taking the teeth out of the nation. That's my language. But that's another aspect. I did do the publication. It's not out there. It's a small book. Meaning it's not out there anymore. I distributed when I was distributing it. Let's make it 30 years ago. Okay. But in any case, to address those allegations. So I did that. I was satisfied. My heart was at peace, and I haven't brought it up for some time now. But alhamdulillah, the history, when history comes back, you have to revisit certain things. And inshallah, at another time when we do a deeper dive specifically in those kinds of things, in the future, after we finish the line that we're in, then we can go deeper. So we're going more horizontally right now, but the vertical, we could do a deeper dive on everything, but that's, I don't know where in the future that is. Inshallah, if Allah give us life and motivation for its purpose at the time, then we do that. But got to move on. We have to move on. Thank you, Tyson, so much. All right. So what are we talking about today? Today, excuse me.